we have this thing up here, our brain, and they now do all kinds of diagrams because they know how to do terrific 3D diagrams of inside your brain. And many of them, to represent how the brain works, they have little threads going through, touching other little threads, and there's a little light that goes on when they touch another place in their brain, trying to show that your thoughts go from part of your brain to another part, to the parts that make this hand move around, to another part that smells or hears or talks or has your heart go, that your brain has more blood in it than any other. You basically have your heart to run your brain because your brain uses up so much of the blood, so much of the energy and oxygen that is in the blood, that it is the main part of your body, no doubt about that. And that goes along with the joke I told about the brain being the most important organ of the body. Anyway, that little diagram always held my attention. And then I read something, and perhaps it's apocryphal. I don't know if it's true or not, but if it works as an ordering principle for your thoughts, we can hold it true even if it isn't, as a diagram in our heads. And I've always admired spider webs, their beauty of their bilateral symmetry, or the strange slight difference in their symmetry as the thread goes around actually in a spiral, and the other arms out, of how beautiful they are. And how does it know to do that? How does it do that? And I thought that had a kind of intelligence that is beyond any ability we have for thinking about this strange little 8-legged creature. And then I came across a note, and this is what I don't know if it's true or not, but that in the growth of the anacroids, if that's what they're called, anacrids, spiders, that in their development, as man develops in the Darwin sense, that further in their development is not that web. That's not the smartest spider or the most developed spider, most sophisticated spider. It's the cobweb. That the cobweb and the little spider that makes the cobweb is much more further along the evolutionary line, that it's a more efficient way of catching insects, easier to make, uses less thread. And that cobweb is so similar to the way our brain works, that the connections in the spider web, the classic spider web, are rather obvious and clear. Mostly it's just two things crossing. And in a spider web, it can be many things, and you can get anywhere. And that, to me, is much more the design of my life, is a cobweb of multi-connections that go in 3 dimensions, actually 4 dimensions in time. And so I used it as an operative. And operatives are quite interesting. The great breakthrough in astronomy of the solar system was Copernicus using as an operative the sun in the middle of a series of circles. We know today that that's not true. It's not a series of circles. It took Tycho Brahe, strange spelling of his name, Tycho, Tycho, Brahe, I think. Tycho Brahe, who was a very wealthy young man, had a rich family, and they had a little company town, and they made instruments, and he indulged himself with the family money, and they made all kinds of instruments to view the heavens, which was their TV show for thousands of years. He took measurements of things he saw, somehow measurements beyond the measurements and the calculations of anybody up to him, certainly in Europe at that time. Kepler found those and wanted to use them, and he wouldn't let him use them. They went back and forth. There's a whole story of how Kepler finally got to use them. And finally, Tycho Brahe dying. Anyway, Kepler used these calculations and saw that the planets go around the sun in ellipses, not at all circles, and not in a flat plane. All the ellipses are at different angles, and sometimes the planet takes years to go around the sun, sometimes half a year, based on our year. But the only way he could be given permission to do, he didn't have to fight off the dogs to say that the planets went around the sun basically in a circular way, because Copernicus had already done that for him with his operative of the planets going around in circles. He changed it to ellipses, but now that's been changed again. It's not any ellipses of things going around the sun, but the sun is moving at tens and 20s and 30s of thousands of years, miles an hour or a second, and it's bringing this whole group of planets with them as it moves. So it's not, they're not only going around in an elliptical fashion, but they're moving with the sun in a path through our local little group of Milky Way sparkles in the sky. But they're so far away in the conceptual thinking possible at the time of Copernicus that you couldn't go right there in the beginning. So much of science, much of life, much of speaking, much of habits, much of dress, much of art is a series of acceptable operatives that push believability out a little bit. And then when you get up to there, push it out further. But you need the original operative diagram in order to give permission to successive groups of discoverers within the arts and within science and within literature and within business.